Um, April, could we get that poll going here now? Okay, everyone, I'm just gonna start a poll here. We're going to ask you, what is your experience with Adobe Spark or any of the Adobe suite, or really graphic design at all? I'm just trying to get a feel for what the class is going to be like today. These questions, they don't really they're not going to affect much, where it'll all go the same anyway. So, but I want to know more about you.
So, Diego, I'm not sure if you can see the poll results.
They're coming in.
Okay, just
I'm getting them. All right, I think that's probably good. All right, so we've got a lot of beginners in here today. That's great, because this is pretty much tailored for starting from square one. All right, so I'm gonna go ahead and share my screen now. Let me just get this set up. All right. Can everyone see my screen? All right. Okay. So let me just start my presentation here. Alrighty, everyone. So like I said, this is Introduction to Adobe Spark / Express, and I'm Diego Delgado. And anyone who's just here getting in, I just want to say welcome to this introductory course. Let's get started. So you probably hear me saying Adobe Spark / Express. And really, the reason I'm doing that is because this program used to be called Adobe Spark, and they've recently rebranded to Adobe Express. They refer to the same thing, and I'm probably going to be using the terminology synonymously. It's all referring to the same thing. And what is this thing? Well, Adobe Spark or Express is an online or mobile design application by Adobe. Adobe Express, all of its features are included in other Adobe applications, but some of these applications are a little bit more complex. Adobe Express is really best suited for web design. All right, so Adobe Express is very template based, which is great because even someone with very little experience with graphic design can jump in and get a product that they're real happy with little to no experience at all. Today we're going to be learning how to make this social media advertisement right here for a harvest festival in a fictional town, but it's just to get you guys a feel for how the program actually works. Okay, so moving on. So I am Diego Delgado. I am a senior at the University of New Mexico. I have been studying graphic design and computer science for the past 4 years, and I've had experience with the Adobe Suite for about the past 4 years. It's really fun and it's really entertaining, and I am doing sessions on the rest of the Adobe Suite, and I hope you guys will join me for those too. And I hope that, hold on, let me just make sure something is okay. I'm sorry. Okay, so today is just focused on Adobe Spark and Express, and the afternoon session we'll be going into just a little bit further detail on an actual project that we will be learning how to do. All right, so I'm sorry, moving on. So I'm going to start out by talking to you guys about PARC, which is an acronym. It stands for proximity, alignment, repetition, and contrast. These are the fundamental design principles. And there's a million and one workflows for graphic design, but a lot of professionals and amateurs of alike have settled on, using these as like the model to go off of for designing things in both digital media and, traditional media. So let's dive into what that actually means. So these are just the Oxford Dictionary definitions for these terms. They mean something a little bit different when you actually start getting into graphic design, but let's go through them just for the sake of understanding what they are as words. So proximity. Proximity is nearness in space, time, or relationship. Alignment is the arrangement in a straight line or in correct appropriate relative positions. Repetition. Repetition is the recurrence of an action or event. And contrast, the state of being strikingly different from something else in juxtaposition or close association. That's PARC. And that's all well and good. These are great definitions, but let's see what they mean a little bit more tailored to actual graphic design. So starting out with proximity. Proximity, we use proximity to imply relationships. We put things in close proximity when they mean something to one another. If you want to ask yourself every time you're designing a piece, are elements near the things that they actually belong with? If you put unlike things together, the document can get a little bit confusing. It can get a little bit disorganized. It might feel a little bit cluttered. So you want to keep like things together. We can also use proximity to emphasize or de-emphasize by grouping things together. You put important stuff with important stuff and less important stuff with less important stuff. If something is in big, bold text at the center, you're going to know that that's probably important and the things around it are probably important. Whereas if you have something in, smaller text or less bold at the bottom, you're going to know, okay, that's probably more like a side note. It's probably not the real key to this document. And here I've included 2 examples of proximity. I have the one on the left and the one on the right. This is just like a simple business card. Don't worry too much about how it's not very stylized. This is just demonstrating the 2 different types of proximity. So on the left, we have a document that has poor use of proximity. Things are all over the place. There's not really a sense of cohesion. You don't know what elements are relating to one another. Whereas on the right, things are grouped and they're aligned and it feels a little bit cleaner. A good rule of thumb when you're questioning proximity and whether you're using it well is to take a look at your document and just count the number of times that your eyes make a big jump. On the left, my eyes jump around about 5 times, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Whereas on the left, they jump around twice, 2 big jumps, and then much smaller increments. So this is a better example of proximity. All right, so moving on, we'll talk about alignment. Alignment refers to how things are aligned on the page. If you've ever opened a Word document, written an email, you're probably familiar with the 3 general types of alignment: left, center, and right aligned. Left aligned, of course, is when the straight line is on the left side of the elements. Center aligned is when there's not really a straight line, but the unevenness is distributed equally among both sides. And then right aligned, the straight line is on the right side of the elements. Generally speaking, center alignment is a really safe bet, but it's also considered kind of weak. It's not striking and bold as making it left or center, left or right aligned. But there's nothing wrong with that. It's perfectly fine to use center alignment, but just know that if you're going for a very striking image, maybe try and incorporate left or right alignment. The real key is to look at your document and look for those strong lines that present themselves naturally through graphics or something else. and stick with them. Try and align your elements along with those strong lines. All right, so moving on, we'll move on to repetition. Repetition might just be the most important element, design principle. Repetition ties elements of a design package together. It unifies the package. You can think of repetition as consistency. An example that I like to give is, let's say you're designing a social media advertisement, but at the same time, you have an analog print flyer. You want there to be cohesion between those two things so that you actually know they're referring to the same thing. You can repeat lots of different things too. You can repeat patterns and colors, and you can repeat alignment. You can repeat fonts and typefaces. You just want to create like a branding essentially every time you're making a design package. All right. And lastly, we'll talk about contrast. So contrast should be strong. Contrast should be very noticeable. You don't want like weak contrast. The viewer's eye actually likes contrast and it's drawn to it. It allows designers to highlight important elements of a design package. And here again, I have two examples of good contrast versus bad contrast. On the left, we have some text that you can, it's barely legible up against that background. And on the right, we have pretty much about as much contrast as you can get, white text on a black background. Much more legible, and this might even be overkill in a lot of documents, but it shows how you can really make something pop by using contrast. And contrast can mean a bunch of different things. The obvious one is color and value when referring to documents, but contrast can be a bunch of things. Let's say you have a document that mostly is comprised of circles or very rounded shapes, and then you have right smack dab in the middle a square or a rectangle. That rectangle is going to stand out and it's going to draw the viewer's eye there, and will help you to highlight important elements of your document. All right, so that finishes up our discussion of PARC, proximity, alignment, repetition, and contrast. And I want to just pause here and ask you guys, does everything make sense there? Are you guys feeling good about the PARC principles, or is there anything you want me to go into more detail on? Anything you didn't quite understand? I'll be pausing here for as long as you guys need, just if you have any questions.
You know what, Diego, I can't agree with, I'm agreeing with Stacey Rush. I'm learning a lot about today. And I think I naturally do these things, when we're creating a lot of graphics and design, but I don't really know or understand the background of it. So thank you for sharing that with me. I definitely learned a lot.
It's funny that you mentioned that, because I've noticed just in my personal experience with working with graphic design, a lot of these design principles, they're kind of like language. You know how there are some like language conventions that we follow naturally and we use them well and correctly, but if you had a test on it, you don't necessarily know how you would have to explain it. So we do a lot of these things naturally because, like I said, the user's eyes like contrast and stuff like that. It feels natural to us, and that's why we try and stick to it. We want the viewers to feel comfortable. But it is sometimes helpful to understand, like, under the hood, the nitty-grittiness of it, and like look at it in the big picture. Yeah, I agree. Does anyone else have any questions or comments about PARC before we move on?
I don't have a question, Diego. I just have a comment. I love knowing the PARC acronym. I wrote that down because I am very interested in graphics and how things look We recently made a flyer for the academic bowl, and I think that sort of knowledge helps us knowing how to create those. So thanks.
All right. And if any of you attend any of my other Adobe sessions for the other products, you're going to be seeing this a lot. It's I'm going to probably cover it in about every session because it's just so fundamental to everything graphic design. So we'll be seeing Park again if you come to any of my other Adobe sessions. All right, anyone else?
I also see Brian's question. I have the same question. What kind of microphone are you using?
I am using a I don't know exactly what it is. I could get you the model number, but it's a Scarlett. It's a Scarlett condenser microphone. It's I don't know if they have multiple models, but it's kind of like their base model. It's Scarlett, and it's being run through a Scarlett 2 input, 2 output audio interface. And then I just have a pop guard so that I can get you guys those clean sounds. All right. Well, if everyone's good, we'll move on. All right. All right. So moving on, we're going to talk a little bit about color theory. So color theory is the art/science because it's an art and a science of mixing colors together and using them in a piece. And when I say mixing colors, I don't necessarily mean like you have this color of paint and you have this color of paint, you mix them together to get a new color. I mean combining colors, like you have one color and then you have another color to accent that color. Color theory also includes the kind of subliminal messaging that colors can send or convey to a viewer. So the first color scheme we're going to talk about in terms of color theory is the monochrome color scheme. The monochrome color scheme is used by making use of only one color or hue. So take a color on the color wheel and then make it darker or lighter. You add variation through the lightness and darkness of one color. The great thing about monochrome color schemes is that they're basically guaranteed to match. There are some color schemes out there that it's like, by color theory, they should match. It makes sense that it should match, but then you actually go to try and put it into practice and it just feels wrong. Monochrome color schemes are basically guaranteed to match because it's the same color. Moving on, we'll have analogous color schemes. Analogous color schemes are when you use colors that are next to each other on the color wheel. This is going to be your reds and your oranges and your blues and your greens. Now, I do want to make a distinction here because you might be looking at this example of analogous colors and you might think it looks a whole lot like my example of monochrome. I mean, this is just variations of like a bluish purple, and this is just variations of orange is what it looks like. Here's the difference. When we're looking at a monochrome color scheme, if we take this center color, this medium light, medium dark color, if we wanted to get the color on the left, we would add black. And if we wanted to get the color on the right, we would add white. Whereas with an analogous color scheme, if we wanted to get that color on the left of the center orange, we would actually add red. And if we wanted to get the color on the right side, we would add yellow. So that's just a little distinction that I like to make because sometimes they can look kind of similar, these two color schemes. All right, moving on, we have complementary color schemes. Complementary colors are opposite of one another on the color wheel. This is going to be your oranges and your blues and your reds and your greens. And this is where we really start to get into slightly more complex color schemes. And when you get into more complex color schemes, something you want to be careful with is they can be a little bit overwhelming to the viewer if you're not careful. If you have too many big, vibrant complementary color schemes going on in your document, it can be a little bit aggressive on the eyes, and it might actually detract from the material on your document. Moving on, we have split complementary color schemes. A split complementary color scheme is kind of interesting it takes the colors on either side of the original color's complement. So let's say, for example, we had this orange right here at the top of the color scheme. Well, its complement would be this green straight across from it. And then we take its neighbors. That's how we get the split complementary color scheme. Again, this is a little bit more of a complex color scheme. So you're going to want to be careful. And in this case, you might actually want to start muting your colors a little bit. You might want to lower the saturation or darken them a little bit, just to make them a little bit less aggressive on the eyes. Moving on, we have the triadic color scheme. It's oh, there's an error in my presentation there. I apologize. A triadic color scheme is striking. It's bold. It's impressive. It's very eye-catching. But like as with is the case with a lot of these color schemes, it can be a little bit overpowering at times. So the triadic color scheme, what is it? It's basically if you just took a perfect triangle, an isosceles triangle, smacked it into the color wheel and picked the colors that reach all the points. That's all it is. And it's great because you basically get an equal amount of contrast among all of your colors because they're perfectly equidistant from one another on the color wheel. The primary and secondary colors, your red, yellow, and blue, and then your purple, green, and orange, those are a triadic color scheme. All right, so the very last color scheme we're going to be talking about is the tetradic color scheme. The tetradic color scheme, it's formed by a rectangle in the color wheel. And you can think of it as putting a rectangle inside of a color wheel and then picking all the colors at each point. Or you could just think of it as getting two different sets of complementary colors. Because that's all it is. It's in this example, it's purple and yellow, which are two complementary colors, and then blue and orange, two more complementary colors. I really like this color scheme. It's complex, but as I keep wanting to reiterate, you might want to go with a little bit more muted colors. You might want to lower the saturation, maybe darken them a little bit when you're using these. Since it's such a complex color scheme, what you'll see a lot of the time in design is that you allow one of your colors to be the dominant color. So in this example, I would maybe pick blue to be my main color. I would use that on maybe like the background or something like that. And then I would make text or elements within the document these other colors. All right, so I did mention that part of color theory is that the messages that these colors can convey. It's not limited to just picking colors based on what looks good. It's picking colors based on what they mean. And this is a little bit subjective, but this is kind of a general consensus on some of the emotions that certain colors can convey. So blue, it gives you a sense of being loyal, respectful, or friendly. Red, it's bold and powerful and energetic. Yellow, as you might guess, it can kind of signify caution at times. Or it could be warm and happy because the sun or sunshine or flowers or something like that. Purple, it's more of a sensitive color. It's a little bit, it can be considered royal or dignified. In fact, historically, purple has been used to signify royalty. Kind of, you might use it to signify some kind of luxury. Green, as you might guess, can be symbolic of nature or health or enthusiasm. And then orange is another one of those kind of powerful colors. It can feel adventurous or youthful or competitive. And then moving on from these, primary and secondary colors, we have some specialty cases. Black is often associated with being sophisticated or secure or powerful. It can mean authority and it can mean elegance. White can mean purity, innocence. It can be associated with being clean. It's also simple and pristine. And then one of my favorites is the multicolored color scheme. The multicolored color scheme it's childish, it's playful, it's creative. It kind of signifies freedom and free spiritedness. Um, and so these are the things you're going to want to consider when you're putting your documents together. And a general rule of thumb when picking colors is and this is just a rule of thumb. It's you can by means like break it in either direction. But you want to probably try and stick to 3 colors unless you're doing the multicolored color scheme. Stick to 3 colors and then either black or white. That's just a rule of thumb. It can help a lot of beginner designers to not have too many colors or not enough colors on their document. Here's some examples of common logos that use these colors to signify what they're going for. Apple, of course, they're trying to go for this like sophisticated, black, elegant, intelligent design. Whole Foods, it's green, it signifies health and nature and healthy living and healthy lifestyle. Then, of course, Toys R Us, they want to appeal to children. They're trying to be playful and friendly and show some kind of spirit of fun. And that wraps up our discussion of color theory. I'm going to take another break here. I'm going to take another pause to see if you guys have any questions on color schemes, color theory, specific colors, and then we'll move on after that. But I'll take another pause here. Anyone?
There's an observation only enlightening to see how major brands select their color schemes. Yes, Lisa. There is a strategy in all marketing, that is for sure.
And I'll talk about this a little bit more in a second, but really, I'm actually glad that you brought up brands, and it's because absolutely every aspect of graphic design is associated with your personal or whatever group or entity you're representing. It's associated with their brand. So if we're talking about say education, right? If you're a teacher, an educator, a counselor, something like that, and you're making a design for your school or whoever you're representing, a lot of times you're going to want to just stick with your school colors. And that makes it easy. That makes it easy on you. You don't have to go through all this color theory nonsense. You can just go with the color scheme that's already tried and true and already associated with the brand that you're representing. And Brian, if any of you are signed up for the afternoon session, I'm actually going to be applying all of these principles in putting a document together, and I'll specifically discuss color theory and choosing a color scheme based on the occasion. So we will talk about that more a little bit later and then this afternoon. So if no one else has any questions or comments, we'll keep moving along. Okay. All right. So moving on, we're going to talk about typefaces. Now, what are typefaces? You see a lot of times that people use the word typeface and font synonymously. And honestly, for the most part, you're probably fine doing that. It's not a big deal. But there is a little difference. So a typeface is a specific style of typed lettering, whereas a font is a variation of a typeface. So in this example I have right here, we have the typeface Cascadia Code. And on the right, we have its variants or its fonts. We have Cascadia Code Extra Light, Light, Semi-Bold, and Semi-Light. You can kind of think of a typeface as a package of various fonts. That's the way that I understand it, and that's the way I think it makes the most sense. If you just think of a typeface kind of being like a folder that holds variations of that stylized version of lettering. And there's kind of a science to picking typefaces. Of course, you want to go with what looks good, but you also want to go with what's, like I keep saying, on brand. So Adobe and a lot of the Adobe suite breaks their typefaces down into these categories. Now, Spark does not, but I think it's a really good way of breaking them up and understanding the differences. So we've got sans serif, we've got serif, we've got slab serif, we've got script, black letter, monospaced, hand, and decorative. So that's great, but what does this all mean? Well, sans serif is typefaces that do not have serifs, whereas serif is self-explanatory. It does have serifs. Slab serifs are going to have very thick serifs. They're going to be serifs that look like a slab. Script, it's made to look like calligraphy. It's made to look flowing and smooth and like someone who really knows what they were doing actually wrote that down. Black letter, this is going to be like old time lettering. It's going to feel Gothic and old school. An example of you'll see newspapers will use this black letter a lot of the time. It's kind of considered powerful and like intelligent. Monospaced is interesting, and it can help you in your designs if you know how to use it. Monospaced typefaces, basically every single character will always take up the same amount of space as all the other characters. Non-monospaced typefaces, you'll get these cases where you'll have an uppercase O and it'll take up more space than a lowercase I. But with monospaced, all the characters always take up the same amount of space every time. Hand or handwritten, there's a distinction to be made between handwritten and script. Hand, I don't want to call it sloppy because they can be really beautiful and they can be used really well, but it's less like calligraphy. It's a little bit more like it's just print handwritten text. But it's made to look organic. It's gonna look like you could have just written it down on a piece of paper. And then decorative, it definitely has its place in a lot of scenarios, but I honestly don't see it a whole lot in my personal experience with graphic design. I think that because a lot of times a highly decorative typeface will be distracting and you won't actually get the messages across. You'll see it a lot of times in something like a title, a headline, or a logo. But you wouldn't really use it for just typing out content because it can be a bit distracting. All right, so moving on here. Okay, so you probably heard me say the word serif several times during that last slide. And just in case, to fill in anyone who doesn't know what a serif is a little tiny projection or a tail that's left behind when finishing a stroke while writing. Like imagine you're using like an old time flowing pen, and when you lift the pen off the page, you're going to get that little extra piece of ink that kind of just falls off there at the end. However, serifs have remained as a stylistic option in modern typefaces. You'll see here's an example. I'm pretty sure the T on the left is Calibri, whereas the T on the right should be familiar. It's Times New Roman, and it has serifs on it. So there are a handful of things you're going to want to consider when choosing a font. I would ask when I'm starting up a new document and when I'm doing something for a client or I'm trying to put something together, the very first question I ask is, what is my audience? This can kind of help you to hone the kind of style you're going for with your typefaces. If you're, for example, making a flyer for a preschool, you're going to want your typeface to be probably big and colorful and energetic and fun feeling. Whereas if you were, say, writing academic paper, you're going to want to feel a little bit more professional, a little bit more sophisticated. But then you're going to want to ask yourself, what message do I want to convey? So maybe you are writing something academic, but maybe you're writing something academic for a specific purpose. You know, maybe you're writing maybe you're writing a document that's dedicated to like, let's say you're writing a memo for a fair or a festival. Technically, you're in a little bit more of a professional environment. You're writing a memo, you're trying to inform people, but you also want it to come off as fun, because if your document right out of the gate doesn't convey the message that you are going for, it's gonna ruin the thing that it's actually informing you about. So like the example I gave, if you're writing a memo for something fun, you do want to choose a font that's kind of fun, not distracting, but kind of fun. Probably you're going to avoid things that are typically associated with school, like Times New Roman. If you're trying to go for fun, avoid those academic fonts. And then you're also going to want to consider convention. If you know your audience, and if you know the message you want to convey, the last thing you want to do after you've done all that is consider convention. Because, you know, maybe you've thought it over in your head and you know your audience and you're trying to be fun and all that. But when it comes down to it, if you're writing something that is expected to be 12-point font Times New Roman, you're probably going to have to just go with that. All right. So there's a million and one things you're going to want to consider when choosing a typeface, like all the things I mentioned before. But probably one of the most common ones that I run into as a graphic designer is choosing a serif font or a non-serif font. There's a couple of things you're going to want to consider when choosing that. Keep in mind that serif fonts are usually more legible when printed at a smaller scale. That means you're actually taking a piece of paper, you're putting text on it, and then you're reading it afterwards. Serif fonts are just usually better for that. Whereas serif-free fonts are typically used in digital media. It's not very common that you see serif fonts on things on the web. And that's just a style convention, but it's just something to keep in mind. Keep it in mind and consider it. Okay, so the last thing I want to tell you is that there's absolutely nothing wrong with mixing fonts. You can have different fonts on the same document. There's nothing wrong with that, especially when you're going with something highly stylized like a social media post. You're just not going to want to go overboard. Here's the example of the document that we're going to be working on this afternoon. In this document, we have 3 different fonts. We have, at the very top, we have a non-serif font. And then underneath that, we have a little bit more of a calligraphy / script kind of styled font. And then under that, we actually have an italicized, thin serif font. There's nothing wrong with mixing fonts, but don't go overboard, like I said. And again, another rule of thumb, and this is just a rule of thumb, it's not absolute. Stick with 3 fonts or under, 3 or fewer fonts. All right, so we've just covered a lot of information in a short amount of time. We've covered PARC, proximity, alignment, repetition, and contrast. We've covered color theory. We've covered the color schemes monochrome, analogous, complementary, split complementary, triadic, and tetradic. And we've covered the types of typefaces, the difference between typefaces and fonts, and how they are typically broken up within the Adobe suite. So I'm going to pause here again, ask you guys, do you have any questions, comments, concerns, anything you want me to reiterate over, clarify? Absolutely anything. I'm here to support you. So anything you want me to touch on again, I will.
Hi, Diego. I just want to let you know I signed up for the afternoon session. So good job this morning. Now,
Awesome.
I just signed up for the afternoon. But back in the day, I remember a rule that might be out of date that said to use no more than 3 fonts on a doc.
Mhm.
And although you just said you can use multiple, what is the limit? And does using a different typeface count as one of those 3, 4, 5 options?
Okay, so that's a good question, because I would go back to understanding every time you want to make a graphic design, you're going to want to ask yourself the who, what, when, where, and why. And probably in terms of choosing a typeface, you're going to want to focus on that who and why. Who is this for, and why are you making it? 3 is a convention. Choosing no more than 3 typefaces, that's definitely a convention in graphic design. But I know that there is at least one scenario that you could come up with where you would break convention. And that's just really important to remember when you're designing something. Design is so subjective. There are things that you're gonna like that someone who's gonna see it, in 2 weeks isn't gonna like, and you're never gonna please everyone. We come up with these conventions to kind of try and shoot for the middle, but you're never gonna please everyone. There's always gonna be that one person that's like, oh, that document looks too plain, or that document looks too busy. There's too much going on it. So yeah, choosing three typefaces is definitely a convention. But I mean, if you feel it in your gut that adding that extra typeface for this specific element on the document is going to really pull the whole package together or something like that, don't be afraid. It's an important thing to touch on, and it's an important convention to try and follow. But at the end of the day, you want your document to look good, and you want to be happy with it. So don't think of it as a hard, fast rule. It's totally subjective. We're just shooting for the middle. I hope that answers your question.
Yeah, that was great. Thank you.
Okay. All right. Is there anyone else that has any questions? Like I said, I'm here to support you. If there's anything you want me to touch on, I'm more than happy to. Just double check the chat. Okay. Okay. So I think that we're good on this, and we'll move on a little bit. I'm ready to get starting to actually opening up an Adobe Express document. But actually, real quick, before we get into that, can I just get a general understanding here of how many of you have an Adobe account? Can we get either in the chat, or go ahead and unmute yourself if you don't, or give me a thumbs up, anything. Just let me know. Do any of you not have an Adobe account yet? I do not. Okay, that's fine. The really sweet thing about Adobe Express is that there is such thing as a free account. There's a paid version and there's a free version. And I actually made my example based off of using that free version. There's no paid assets in it. So we'll all be able to walk through this together. But if you're interested in following along, let me get started. Everyone still good? Everyone, can you see my screen, or did you lose it? No? Okay, hold on.
I lost it.
All right. All right, there we go. That's, yeah. Yes.
Nope, you got it. Never mind.
Okay. All right. So we're going to start by opening up, okay, in my experience, Chrome is the best browser to be using for this application. And the slowest in my experience is Firefox. Firefox is just not a very fast browser for using this. Since it's all web-based, everything's run through the internet. It streams absolutely all the content that you're going to be using. So you want to make it as least painful as possible. But we're going to start here by, if you don't have an account, you're going to want to go to just adobe.com. Just type adobe.com into your browser and you'll go to the website.
I added a link for everyone in the chat. And I was able to sign up for the free account really quickly with my Google.
Yep,
sign
it's
up.
real quick. It's a real short process. I think you can do it in under 5 minutes. So once you're at the Adobe account or your Adobe website, I'm gonna actually go to incognito mode so that I'm signed out, so I can walk you guys through this a little bit, or at least try and be a little helpful as you do this. You're gonna click on this button at the very top that says sign in. It's going to, take you to the sign in page. But if you don't have an account, you're going to click this little blue part right here that says create an account. And you're going to just sign up with your email. It's real simple. Just put in an email, put in the password you want to use. You might have to put in a confirmation code that it'll send to your email, but it should go pretty quick. So I'm going to give you guys just a little bit of time to do that. And then we'll pick back up here in just a couple of minutes. Awesome. All right, how are we doing? I'm more than willing to give a little bit more time, but if we're all ready, we can jump right into it. We're good? Found out I already had an account. Okay. All right, well, if everyone's good, we're gonna jump right into it. So this is the Adobe Express page, but it might not be the thing that you're seeing right away. If you go to just the regular adobe.com, your website might look a little bit different. This is probably what you're seeing because this is just the Adobe homepage. Scroll down right here. There will be a box that says Express. You're just going to want to go ahead and click on that. And then in my experience, you'll occasionally encounter just a real minor bug. If for some reason you don't get this page, try just reloading and it should go through. But if not, great, you got in on the first try. So like I said, this is all web-based, so it can be a little bit tricky at times. But if everyone's here on this page, we're going to want to go ahead and click right here where it says Get Adobe Express Free. On that. Just a little bit laggy. And this page right here, same deal. If it doesn't load in right away, or if it's giving you lag or issues or anything like that, try just refreshing the page. That usually fixes it. Christopher
Oh.
Trujillo, I do not have a training for Dreamweaver. I'm going to be sticking to mostly just the most used applications in the Adobe suite. That's going to be Photoshop, Illustrator, Premiere, After Effects, InDesign, stuff like that. But thank you for the question. All right, so if you have this page right here, it's going to say create a new project. And this is already like you just immediately right out of the gate, you have access to a lot of features. It's just like, and you can see it. You can, bam, go straight into creating an Instagram story, straight into an Instagram post, Facebook post, poster, logo, everything like this. All really great stuff. Then if you scroll down a little bit, you'll get even more stuff. And it's great. You can do a lot of real quick things that you would otherwise need some kind of specialty application for. But this is all web-based. It's all great. So just to get you guys an understanding of how all this works, we're going to just make a real simple document and kind of poke around it a little bit. So we're going to click right here where it says custom size. Go ahead and click on that. This part usually takes a little bit of loading, but it's fine. Just give it time, trust the process. All right, cool. So right here, it's really great. You can pick custom sizes to an extent with this application. And you can adjust your document setup to be set in either, I believe, pixels, millimeters, or inches. And well, why would you use inches? Well, you would use inches if you're designing something probably meant to be printed. A standard piece of paper, sheet of paper, printer paper is 8.5 by 11 inches. And I find myself using that ratio quite often. You just set your document up for 8.5 by 11 inches and you're good to go. But for the scope of this lesson and this afternoon's lesson, we're going to be making something optimized for Instagram. So we're going to go over here where it says social post, and you already have just a bunch of presets ready and laid out for you. But we're going to click on this one that just says Instagram right here. It's 1080 by 1080. So you're going to click on that. You're going to click next. And it'll load in, and you'll have these tabs on the side, and you'll have this area right here that loads all your content in. There we go. Okay, so like I said, right out of the gate, we have a lot of stuff to choose from. You can choose just from a template, or you can just work from a blank document. And this afternoon, we're going to be working from a blank document. But in the interest of time and just giving you guys a little taste for the software, we're going to just go ahead and open up a template here. We're going to click on this box right here that says free, because we don't want to get tempted by those premium options. We're trying to keep this all working under the free account only. So we're going to click on free, and then we're going to search in all of our templates. I'm going to type in Halloween. Is there 2 L's? There is, huh? Halloween, and we're going to search. And you'll have a bunch of options, a bunch of cute designs, stuff like that, right out of the gate. And these are, you can go ahead and open one up if you want to just get clicking around on it, or you can pick the one that I'm going to pick. And I'm going to do one more thing. I'm going to go right here where it says filters. I'm going to open up the filters option, and I'm going to go to where it says Instagram post. There should be 46 options under the Instagram post section. And this is going to only show us the free options that are in the aspect ratio that we need. So we've got a lot of cool templates. I'm going to click on this one right here. This one, it's got like a black ground with a spooky tree, and it says Sam's Halloween Party on it. We're going to click on that one. We're going to use that template. It's going to open up, and we are going to just do a couple real quick edits to give you guys a sense for how editing in this application works. Now, something that's a little bit interesting about how Adobe Express works is if you click on the text. You might think, well, I click on the text and then I start typing and I can edit it. But that's not the case in Adobe Express. It's kind of a little funny. You click on the text you want to edit, and you come over here to where it says edit text. And this is where you actually have to be to edit your text elements on your page. So this is Sam's, but I'm just going to change it to Diego's. Or if I can spell my own name, Diego's. And since this is a different size word than Sam originally was, we're gonna have to move it a little bit, but we can just click on this little circle right here that has the arrows on it going in 4 directions. We're just gonna move that over a little bit. Bam. And now it's aligned with all the rest of our text again. Diego's Halloween party. Cool. But, oh, looks like this is a little bit outdated. It looks like this template was originally made in 2019. So we're gonna click on that portion right here, and we're just gonna change it to October 31st, 2020, or 2022. Sorry, I had my year wrong there for a second. And then, okay, so that's starting to look pretty good. Let's click right here. Games begin at 8 p.m. Maybe I don't want to stay up that late. Maybe this is more of a midday to afternoon party, not so much of a night party. So I'm going to change that. I'm going to change it to 4 p.m. All right. So that looks pretty good, and I'm feeling pretty confident with that. Now it's all customized, it's all ready, it's all set together. My documents are edited the way they want. If I was a little bit uncertain to how things were layered or how things were stacked in this document, I can click right here, and that actually brings up the stack, and I can use that to select different elements. That can be really handy for knowing what's actually on your page. So these two ones right here, these ones with the little square with the hash marks on it, that indicates that it's a background image, and everything on top of that is your actual content. So I could click on Diego's right here, and it'll take me, it's the same as clicking on it. It'll take me to the page where I can edit it. I can change the typeface, I can change the size, the spacing, the alignment, the opacity, which is really cool, and the color. Then we can do some text effects, which we'll cover a little bit later in the afternoon session. But all right, so I'm pretty satisfied with that. So what do I do when I have a product and I'm finished with it and I'm happy with it and all that, and I actually want to use it? Well, we can share it, which is great. But what I'm going to do is I'm just going to download it. And you can download it as different file types, but I'm going to download it as a PNG. Start downloading. All right, great job on your first project. Continue with free trial. We can just close that. We don't want to worry about that. Okay, so my project PNG, and you can name it anything you want, but this is just for demonstration's sake. Bam. Now we have it in a PNG file format. Cool. And it's on our computer. We can use it. We can save it. We can send it out. It's great. Okay. So it looks like we're just about out of time here, which is great because we just finished that up. I do want to give you guys some time for one more chance for any questions, comments, concerns, anything you were curious about. How did that feel? How did that feel, that first trial run of using the software, or not even software, it's web-based program? Questions, comments, concerns?
I have a question.
Yes.
I put it in the chat. I just said that I was noticing a lot of similarities with Canva. Are they the
Yes.
same or just super similar? And which one do you prefer?
So I prefer Express. It is very similar to Canva. It's very similar to Canva.
But they're not owned by the same people.
They are not. Express is just Adobe's answer to Canva, basically. It's just their version of a web-based design application. The reason that I prefer Express over Canva is it's all preference, but I'm used to Adobe products. I know how they work. And if you're interested in using other Adobe products, if you're going to sign up for the Photoshop or the Illustrator classes, I would recommend working in Express, because just a lot of the conventions, it's going to feel the same. It's going to feel familiar. And you won't have to get bogged down with learning, a bunch of different stuff. That's why I prefer Express. But they are very similar.
Okay, that's nice too, because it allows you to pick from different images that Canva might not have.
Right. And we'll talk a little bit more about that in the afternoon session if you come back. We'll talk about the free templates and the you have limited access, but a little bit of access to Adobe stock. So you get a lot of cool stock images included with the free account.
Awesome.
And then you've got, you know, all your vector shapes, all of your backgrounds, all your design assets. It's pretty sweet. But yeah, if you come back for the afternoon session, we'll talk about that a little bit more.
Thank you.
All right. Anyone else? I'll be sticking around for just a little. I'll stick around a little bit after the session to make sure that you guys are, there's nothing. Thank you for the training. That there's nothing that you guys need to know or want to ask me.